Hey everyone, it's Naomi Wolf and Brian O'Shea, or perhaps Brian O'Shea and Naomi Wolf. And we are here with In the Lair, Substack Live, and on my podcast, Outspoken, and on Brian's podcast, Investigate Everything. And Brian has an unbelievable bombshell revelation. I can't even get over it. I don't even know how he found this, but he put it out on Substack, and he's getting tons of requests from independent media to talk more about it. And so we have the scoop here on In the Lair. Sadly, we're not physically in the same place. I'm in Brooklyn and Brian's at an undisclosed location in Massachusetts. But we, through the power of virtual technology, can host a show together. And darling, what did you find?
Well, okay, so yesterday, as many of you know, yesterday, or I guess the day before, I haven't slept much because I got into true detective mode. And welcome everyone. Thanks for having us, or thanks for joining us. I started getting my show ready, which was 4 days late, as you know. And as I was going through it, and the show is about things related to Epstein, as I started going through my show notes, just making sure I had my sources, I see this news article that on the 23rd, a judge Rosenberg, Robin L. Rosenberg from West Palm Beach, denied the Trump DOJ's request to unseal the grand jury transcripts from the grand jury proceedings and investigations that occurred in Palm Beach County against Jeffrey Epstein between 2005 and 2007. I found this odd because I don't understand at this point why anyone would want to not unseal these. And let's not forget, the judge who was appointed by Obama in 2014, she clearly from her background is on the left. Now it's the left that's been screaming about Trump, you got to open these documents, give transparency. We know you're in them. So far that even like Dan Goldman has been really spearheading memo after memo. Go ahead.
Dan Goldman? Do you mean Dan Goldman?
Dan Goldman, the congressman.
Dan Goldman, not my uncle Dan Goldman.
Dan Goldman. Sorry, yeah, I always get those two. Their names confused, not the two. One has ethics and one does not. So they've formalized their push for Donald Trump to open these Epstein files, which, by the way, side note, is funny because they weren't pushing Biden to open them, and he could have as well. So that aside, what caught my attention in this judge's ruling that blocked the unsealing of these is the fact that at the very end she said it's so ordered that we're denying the request. It's also so ordered that any further, this case is closed, meaning the unsealing case, and further any efforts basically to open it or anything relating to the unsealing of these particular documents, this particular case, needs to be assigned to the undersigned, that being her. Now, I've never seen a judge pre-appoint themselves to a case that hasn't even occurred yet, may never occur.
Can I just jump in, sweetheart? Because,
sure.
A couple of things. There's a little bit of a buzz on your mic.
I'm sorry, it's the air conditioning because it's really hot here and I'm poor and I have a window unit. So let me try to reduce the background noise.
I think it's actually coming from the mic. So maybe if you move away from the mic.
How's this? Is this better?
That is better, sweetheart. Thank you.
Okay, good.
And the other thing is you're laying out a ton of fascinating and important information, but very quickly for those of us who don't have a legal background. So can you just, before you go on with the detail, just put in really explain it to me like I'm a smart 15-year-old, what just happened? Like, what did you just explain?
I can do that. Hold on just a second. I will walk you right through it.
Thank you. I mean, what's the headline? Is the headline Obama appointed judge sealed evidence and is what why don't you start with the headline and then show us?
Yep. Let me pull up the headline right now because I put it in a Substack. Judge who denied President Trump's bid to unseal Florida federal grand jury Epstein transcripts is married to then successor of that state attorney who helped broker Epstein's sweetheart deal with Alexander Acosta.
Oh, bury the lead. Oh my God, that's gigantic. That's huge. that's a multi-person family intervening to deny justice to victims. That's extraordinary.
Yeah, and I actually, well, here's the thing. So I did a quick Substack, which I need to rewrite because the grammar's terrible. But so here she is. Here's her husband, Michael McAuliffe, who is a writer now, a wannabe John Grisham. There they are together, and I put all that there just for a fancy tile, but also to show people that they are in fact married. So,
wow.
Basically, what I said was that the judge has made sure that those decades-old grand jury transcripts will not see the light of day. Mm-hmm. If she is trying to protect someone, then that someone would probably be Michael McAuliffe, her current husband, who was the successor to Florida State Attorney Barry Krischer. And a Florida State Attorney, that's like a DA or an AG. That's the head prosecutor, the chief law enforcement officer of that county. Though these grand jury proceedings and the now infamous sweetheart deal preceded Michael McAuliffe's time in office as Florida State Attorney General, it seems likely that McAuliffe failed to have his department enforce any of the rules for the house arrest and probation of Jeffrey Epstein. So Jeffrey Epstein started his probation. So he went to jail, I believe, in 2008. He was supposed to spend 18 months in prison, which is nothing for the amount of indictments against him, charges. But then he only spent 13 months in prison in the county lockup, right. Which the county lockup, by the way, is not where you house people for long term. It's like pre-trial confinement. But Epstein, while he was in jail, he had this sweetheart deal. First of all, the deal let him not not basically go to a federal penitentiary for decades like he should have. But it also let him, he had to register as a sex offender, but he was only on the list for 1 year. Like, he'd come off the sex offender list before he was even out of prison.
Oh my gosh.
That deal was brokered by mainly two men. Florida federal AG, Alexander Acosta, who later became Trump's Secretary of Labor, and then was subsequently fired, or he resigned, when it was discovered his links to Jeffrey Epstein. And that sweetheart deal, unprecedented, by the way.
Right.
And then the other one was this Barry Krischer, who was the Florida State Attorney for Palm Beach County. That's the county Jeffrey Epstein lived in, not to be confused with West Palm Beach. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it was the deal of the century. I go through that. And so this guy, McAuliffe, he actually started the job in January of 2009. So he unseated in the election, because they elect them down there, McAuliffe, the husband of the judge who just blocked Trump's request for transparency. McAuliffe beat him in an election. Now, if you go through those election headlines, you'll see it was totally backed by the whole Democratic intelligentsia. Someone decided that Barry's out, McAuliffe is in. Okay, so what then happened was in July of 2009, 6 months into McAuliffe's term, McAuliffe, that's when Jeffrey Epstein was basically allowed to be out on probation.
Right, I remember that. He would go home to his luxurious house and have coffee massages and then check in.
It was worse, Naomi.
Uh-huh.
A judge allowed him to fly anywhere he wanted for as long as he's back in 24 hours. Now, for a judge can rule anything he wants, but it has to have the buy-in of the state attorney,
right,
who at the time was this judge's husband. Well, obviously no fight was put up. Right. Now, as we know, and this went on from July of 2009 till July of 2010, and in July of 2010, Jeffrey Epstein was done with his sentencing. Well, I'm sorry, that's when he officially began probation, okay? Right. Because he was on house arrest because they let him out of jail early for no reason. Mm-hmm. Well, anyways, McAuliffe was fully aware of that. McAuliffe, according to state records, was also aware that Epstein had been violating his house arrest conditions and his probation.
Mhm.
And according to Holly Baltz of the Palm Beach Post, it says here in her piece written in 2009, McAuliffe was aware that Epstein had violated his house arrest, but took no action. According to journalist Holly Baltz, the documented violation of his house arrest included frequent travel, including to his private island in the Virgin Islands, where many of his sex crimes were said to have taken place.
While he was on probation? Is that what you're saying?
While he was under house arrest.
Holy cow.
So he's essentially under house arrest. So, Naomi, I've got to hop on another spot. Can I pick it up in about 5 minutes?
Yes, you can. And
okay.
You're in demand, and I'll carry it on.
No, I agreed to this when I was half asleep, so I do apologize. So I will be right back.
Apologize. Just do your thing. It's a big story, and
okay.
I'll talk more about this.
Sounds great.
It's a good opportunity for me to talk about.
All right, I'm gonna hop off. I'll be right back.
All right, just come back.
You look gorgeous, by the way.
Thank you, darling.
In your undisclosed location.
Okay.
What code name are you using today? Natisha, Nikita? What is it? All right, I'll get back to you.
Okay. This is a really great segue to pick up for this audience what I wrote about last week, which is my own experience of Jeffrey Epstein being out and about after the period that Brian has just narrated to us, in kind of elite social circles in New York City, probably Boston and DC as well, but I was only aware of the ones in New York City. Hey everyone, it's Naomi Wolf of Daily Clout. Have you ever wondered why your brain can feel foggy even when you're eating clean and exercising? It might not be burnout, it could be parasites. Groundbreaking research from Dr. Alan MacDonald reveals a direct link between chronic parasite infections and neurological diseases, such as multiple sclerosis. Parasites can cause inflammation, nerve damage, and long-term cognitive decline. More reason to do a full body cleanse at least once a year. The wellness company has a solution for you, ivermectin and mebendazole, the gold standard parasite solution now combined in one cleanse combo designed to eliminate harmful invaders and support your immune system naturally. Medical grade, not some trendy herbal gimmick. Fill out a quick intake form and you'll get a 3-month supply shipped straight to your door. MAHA is officially here, and the wellness company is making hard to get medications digitally accessible so you can live your best life. Head to dailyclout.health and use code dailyclout to save $60 off plus free shipping on all orders. Cleanse your body today. Get rid of parasites today. Thank you. The events in New York City. And I was literally on a list of public figures. I don't want to say celebrities, but a lot of the other people were celebrities. Convened by a famous publicist named Peggy Siegel, and a very nice woman. I liked her. She was fun, bubbly. She gave great parties, but she basically had an A-list and a B-list, and I was frequently invited to the B-list things, and sometimes to the A-list things. But I know, and there was a mix at her events of media, celebrities in New York, big money, hedge fund guys, Wall Street guys, investors after 2010, definitely tech CEOs, entrepreneurs in the tech space were part of it. They were newcomers, kind of politicians, and film and TV stars and rock stars, music stars. So it was a very interesting and exciting kind of mix of people. And I gather that Jeffrey Epstein hired her to usher him back into New York society. Famous playwrights were there, famous producers were there, many, many bold-faced names that you would recognize. And there was nothing wrong with these events. They were lovely, film screenings and book launches and panel discussions and galas. But Jeffrey Epstein definitely made his appearance in a very systematic way. I'm going to say about 2011, 2012, that's when I became aware of him. And I saw him. I mean, I was at an event at a movie theater, and it was like a special screening. So it was a fancy movie theater that was closed off for the event. And a group of hedge fund guys were kind of standing around chatting with me, or I was chatting with them. And someone said, "That's Jeffrey Epstein," and pointed out seemed to me a very tall man, although I've been told since he's not particularly tall, with very silvery gleaming hair, very well dressed, carried himself very proudly. There's no other way to say it. There was no shame in his affect. It was like, how can I put it? He was proud of himself. He was charismatic, like carrying himself like, I am someone special. And he was making his way to his seat, and someone said, yeah, he got out of prison for having sex with, minor girls or minor women, is I think how they put it, like teenage women. And the other guys were like, it wasn't like, that's disgusting, he's a pedophile. They were like, well, that was the vibe. No one said this, right? But the vibe was reflective, not aversive. Like, well, that's skating too close to the edge, or that's soaring too close to the sun, or whatever. Like, almost like admiring, like very much the way that the quotes that you got from other people around him, like, oh, he liked women on the younger side, or the famous quote from Bill Gates, I was intrigued by his lifestyle, it's not right for me. These are kind of code ways of saying he was having sex. I mean, obviously it's trafficking. Trafficking, we didn't know the details then, but certainly that he had sex with underage women, girls. To me, as a survivor of child rape and as someone who'd been molested by a professor when I was a teenager, that was, deeply disgusting and appalling, and I was horrified. But what I will never forget is the guys, after this was all discussed briefly, they started making their way toward him. They didn't make their way away from him. So it was almost like cachet or a frisson, like, oh, that's exciting, that's interesting, let's find out more. And the other thing, to bear in mind as you're thinking about all of this, and I wrote this essay about the network and how critical it is on the left or in the liberal media. And it's not just on the left, in these elite circles. Even if you don't like or approve of or really object to behavior of other powerful people in the network, you really will put up with just about anything to not cross the network or lose the network, because the network is all powerful. And your doors open to you if you have the network, even with its dubious or questionable or malevolent participants. And without the network, you're nothing. And you really learn this. It's kind of like the mafia. You may not like or agree with every capo and every don, is the way I put it in my essay, but you can't leave, right? You can't cross the network. You can't whistle blow on the network. You can't betray the network. It's very, very powerful. So in 2019, the story broke that Jeffrey Epstein had funded this group of scientists who were mostly out of Harvard, that were convened by my then agent, John Brockman. He'd been my agent my whole career. And he was a brilliant agent. And he developed something called the third culture, which was the intersection of technology, humanities, and culture. And Brockman was tapping, and Harvard was separately kind of managing the introductions with all these brilliant scientists in these key areas. And what people did know at Harvard, but what we didn't know, who were John Brockman's clients, at least I didn't know, is that, and I didn't know anyone who knew, is that Jeffrey Epstein was funding this convening of these scientists into something called the EDGE organization. And Jeffrey Epstein was also funding them through Harvard. And he gave Harvard at least $9 million. He had an office in the math department provided by Harvard, which is kind of unheard of for a non-staff member. And connectors in the administration brought scientists to him, right? And those of you who saw my video essay about this or read my essay already know this, but it's worth recapping, because what Brian has found is the timeline of corruption that leads right up to those years, right, of harnessing and harvesting and convening in a bigger way than even in the early 2000s, the critical scientists of our era. Well, they weren't random scientists. He wasn't tapping people involved in food production or even really real medicine, right, as opposed to biotech or, space dynamics. He was tapping specifically physicists and evolutionary biologists, people like Richard Dawkins, who wrote a book called The Selfish Gene about how males just want to, are evolutionarily primed to have intercourse with multiple women, to not be monogamous, and women are not. A book that was used very much in the sexual revolution to justify male infidelity. Men would say, well, look at what Richard Dawkins wrote. It's I evolved to do this. It's natural. It's unnatural to be in a committed monogamous family relationship. Is the argument of the book for men, at least. And also people involved in consciousness, people looking at multiple dimensions, people looking at the difference between mind and brain, and very much people involved in genetics and interventions in genetics and eugenics, you could say. Like Craig Venter, the guy who mapped the human genome. So it's not a random cross-section of brilliant scientists. It's literally the brilliant scientists who were brought together starting in 2010 or a little earlier, with tech CEOs at a group of dinners called the Billionaires Dinners that Brockman's organization convened. And I remember thinking, how does this literary agent, as respected as he is, convene the leaders of Google, the leaders of Amazon, the leaders of Microsoft, the Apple developers of the iPad and the iPod? How does he convene, Carrie Mullis, who developed the PCR test weirdly, and Matt Groening, who puts strangely futuristic predictions into the Simpsons, right? And the future leader, Susan Wojcicki, the future leader of YouTube, and Marissa Mayer, the future leader of Yahoo. It was surreal, and it remains surreal for the following decade. But what I want to say is those scientists and those technologists were brought together, and what emerged, I don't know if it's just out of those conversations, but I don't know of any other time or place that these scientists and these technologists were brought together. What emerged, looking back, however it emerged, is our world and the most dystopian aspects of our world. Transhumanism, surveillance technologies, CRISPR, the mRNA injection, the intervention, the desire to intervene in the human genome, the collection of human DNA, the manipulation of human DNA, where, Kevin McKernan found that there's DNA in fragments in the mRNA injection, and that it, changes our DNA. The world of kids being glued to technology on their phones, the harvesting of data, all of this dystopian reality that we're living with now, central bank digital currency, vaccine passports, all of all of those outcomes couldn't have been materialized if it hadn't been for whatever Jeffrey Epstein was up to in selecting and cultivating and funding these particular scientists and bringing them together. For what reason? I'm dying to know. I don't know. Why? Why would Jeffrey Epstein want to bring these technologists, the biggest technologists in the world, out of Silicon Valley, together with these scientists who were who could be put together in such a dystopian way, such an anti-family way, such an anti-humanity way? I don't know, but as I said in the essay, and I don't know who's behind Jeffrey Epstein. I don't know. I don't know who he is. I don't know where he got his money. I can't wait for Brian to come back, because in Brian's view, he's not just an intelligence asset of the US, because we can't afford that scale of operation, according to Brian. I don't know. I'm not a spy, but Brian has familiarity with the world of intelligence. It'll be interesting to hear what he says. But a lot of people who are knowledgeable about intelligence think that whatever was running Epstein is bigger than any one intelligence agency, right? Bigger, multiple entities, multiple funders, and a multi-function platform. I mean, that's what's so interesting. And I started thinking about this again from a podcast by Eric Weinstein, who was one of Brockman's clients, or at least someone who was a commentator on the Edge website, which is still up. Eric Weinstein was managing director of Thiel Capital, Peter Thiel's, funding organization, and he is also a Harvard-trained mathematician and a kind of a brilliant guy. But he was, in his interview, which you should really watch, kind of upset and wondering who put Epstein in the middle of all of those Harvard intellectuals. And, you could ask the same question: who put Epstein in the middle of all of those Silicon Valley technologists? And the point I made in my essay, and I'm making it again, is innocent and guilty people on paper have been swept up in this engagement operation, right? Like someone sent Epstein to meet with all these scientists who now, whatever they did or didn't do, are in these records, right? Even perfectly innocent people. And by the way, there were men and women at these gatherings where Epstein was, and there were men and women at the lunches and dinners. And, it just seems clear to me that this is an operation that compromised by association innocent and guilty people. Because now every single person who's a leading light in the world of these areas of science, right? Physics, mathematics, consciousness, evolution, genetics. They're in the documents probably, very big names. And pretty much every technologist, they're going to be in the documents, very big names, whatever they did, whatever they didn't do. The other thing I find very, very interesting is that Epstein invited the scientists to New Mexico, to his ranch in New Mexico, and to his island. And I really my heart goes out to these scientists, because, not to the guilty ones, of course, but to this, it seems like clearly a sting operation of some kind, not just a honeypot, but something beyond that involving science and technology. Because when you're, a Harvard mathematician or a Harvard physics professor, you're not making a ton of money. And you don't have a ton of money. You have to raise a lot of money yourself for your department. When a connector at Harvard says, meet this funder, you have to meet him. And once you start getting funding from a donor, you have to keep that donor happy. So these poor schmucks, again, no mercy for the guilty, but for sure this dragnet is likely to have included innocent as well as guilty people. They weren't able to say to their Harvard handler, I'm not going on the plane. I'm not going to New Mexico. I'm not going to the island. Maybe they could, but knowing how academic politics works, these guys were kind of railroaded into a very compromised position. Again, no mercy for the ones who, once they were there, did bad things. No mercy, right? But I do think it's important to look at the kind of dragnet operation of this that goes so far beyond what we thought we knew, so far beyond, a retail clothing manufacturer, Wexner out of Iowa. Hi, everyone. It's Naomi Wolf. The American healthcare system is broken. Big Pharma charges an arm and a leg for their products, while insurance companies are focused on growing healthcare spending. So I'm always researching ways to take care of myself naturally. And one of the most overlooked factors is improving your blood flow. That means more oxygen and nutrients to your brain, heart, muscles. All our bodies need a little extra help as we get older. I use Blood Flow 7 from Juvenon. It works by boosting nitric oxide levels 230% and opening arteries up to 62% to improve blood flow. With just one dose a day, it's helped improve my stamina, energy, focus, and it supports my heart health, all without caffeine or stimulants. It's doctor formulated, scientifically backed with premium and natural ingredients. I wouldn't share it if it didn't work for me and for people I love. So go to www.bloodflow7.com/dailyclout or click the link in the description below to learn more today. Was it Iowa? Ohio, I'm sorry. Or politicians, like, they're not as important as this, right? Even well-known politicians who got caught into his dragnet are not as important. Ehud Barak, we know he was a visitor, right? We know that a lot of major politicians were on the plane. That is really important. But I think in terms of human history and world history, to me, big picture, it's even more important that there was a dragnet set up to compromise and impugn and maybe even blackmail the world's major technologists out of Silicon Valley and a whole generation of scientists at the cutting edge of all the things that transhumanist globalists want to do to humanity. And then I look back at the books of these guys and I wonder, how much of this is organic, right? Maybe it's all organic, but a lot was steering the intellectual development of these scientists. So I'm thinking, for instance, about Richard Dawkins, whom I've met, whom I like quite a lot, nice guy, brilliant guy. Oxford evolutionary biologist, I believe. I'll need to call up his bio. But famously, he wrote a book called The God Delusion, which is a bit of a detour, if your subject is evolution. And it's an incredibly comprehensive argument in favor of there being no God. And, looking back, you really have to think about that. Like, that's not really in his lane. He's an evolutionary biologist. What does this have to do with that? It's very much a cultural argument. And, it's been used by secularists all over the world to bolster the argument that God does not exist. And I've seen this poor man. I was at a dinner party with him. Again, my heart really goes out to some of these guys, that will end when we know who's innocent and who's guilty. But for right now, benefit of the doubt, this is a guy who's brilliant, and he has to defend the case he made that there is no God. And I literally was at a dinner party in Oxford, and this is like the way he reacted. This is clearly like every dinner party. Someone starts to hammer at him about, well, what are you going to do if you're deathly ill, or what are you going to say on your deathbed, or have you never prayed for deliverance from pain, or people just trying to like badger him into disavowing his argument, which isn't the way to go if you really believe in God, in my opinion. But this poor man had to live through that over and over and over. Maybe he really felt the need to say God is a delusion. And maybe there was some gentle, some gentle encouragement in the direction of such a well-known name in evolutionary biology, writing a whole book saying, don't believe in God. I don't know, maybe I'm totally wrong, but if you look at a lot of the books, and I'm kind of scared to do this analysis, that came out of that stable of writers, they really go to construct our world, in its darker aspects. Another example is The Selfish Gene, right? Which I mentioned, Dawkins' earlier book. If your goal was to destroy the family, that's a really good book to have out in the world. There's a book called The Gnostic Gospels. I love Elaine Pagels, love her. It's a beautiful book. It's important. It also disrupts the story of Christianity. So it's just a very interesting, and I look at my own career, out of nowhere. I mean, this is kind of a scary thought, but out of nowhere, I was plucked out of obscurity to be kind of the next face of feminism. And I wrote a book about teenage girls coming of age sexually, and it got a huge advance and tons of media play. I guess what I'm wondering is how much of our culture is real and how much is, I'm not going to say manufactured, but helped along, right? Like I would have written that book anyway. Maybe Dawkins would have written The God Delusion anyway, but I've been in publishing a long time, and the books that happened to align with the agenda of destroying humanity, destroying the family, destroying faith, destroying the West, subjugating humans to impersonal forces, doing away with the idea of free will. Those were books that during this period got the huge advances and the huge promotion. And I don't know if that's organic, just culture at work, heading in a certain direction, or if there's something inorganic about it. But let's close the circle and just say it was certainly inorganic that these technologists and these handpicked scientists were put together into a dragnet that compromised them all, at least on paper. That was curated by Jeffrey Epstein. And then Gum by Pokey says the great narrative has been a thing for a while. That's a really important point, because that's what I guess I'm talking about, the great narrative, right? Things went in that direction when they could have gone in that direction. And I'm thinking a lot these days about my friend Josh Stileman's essays on his Substack. He's a technologist, very successful technologist and a tech investor, and he is also an entrepreneur who started a famous brewery or pub called Three's Brewing in New York and Brooklyn. And he is making the case that all culture is constructed, that every history is constructed, culture is constructed. And he's scaring me to death because, it's the kind of thing that usually it's like not very well educated people sometimes will say, look, I found a video clip, it was all made up by Tartaria or whatever, and I can roll my eyes and move on. But Josh is highly educated. He's an impeccable researcher, and he links to every statement that he makes with really good primary sources. And he has literally made the case that the Tavistock Institute out of Britain, which, by the way, most recently has been promoting sex change operations for minors, that they essentially produce culture, and that the key people in our culture in Britain and America for 100 years have been put there, essentially, at one remove from intelligence agencies, or one remove from Tavistock, or one remove from, MI6 or the CIA, whatever, and MK Ultra programs. And I would love to dismiss what he's saying, but then he'll show me again and again and again the links of famous musicians to operatives, the links of the Beatles to operatives, the links of LSD and the hippie revolution to operatives. In fact, I just read a whole book about it, Chaos, which is very well documented. And people around me when I was growing up in San Francisco in the Haight-Ashbury were connected to a CIA program run by psychologists to tamper with the brains of hippies using psychedelics out of a clinic that everyone loved and went to, the Haight-Ashbury Free Clinic, which we all thought was the most innocent, benevolent, hippie-originated thing where you could go and get free medical treatment. Oh my God, it was actually a CIA-funded program. So I'm beginning to rethink all of my assumptions, but I guess I'm going to hand it over to Brian now. Brian, I was just recapping kind of my part of the story from 2012 on in terms of all the scientists and that the big picture. I think that what's in the Epstein papers is going to be kind of world shaking because it's going to be more than about a handful of pedophiles, as networked as they are. So let's pick it up with you, darling. So what else did you find?
Okay, so I think you're right. I would also caution people to beware of putting all your eggs in the Epstein basket, because let's think about the media coverage. Both sides of the media, which are all one side, which is corporations, they're all keeping everyone focused on Epstein. The left is keeping people focused on the MAGA's reaction to the Bondi DOJ's handling of Epstein. The right is focused on Epstein unveiling possibly this big network, and also Bondi's handling of Epstein. There's other ops. That's the thing. In my opinion, I don't think Jeffrey Epstein was created by the agency. I think he was created by the establishment, meaning, I think his ties go back to the Iran-Contra affair. And if you do the math on where Bill Clinton was at the time, and he was governor of Arkansas, Mena, Arkansas, Barry Seal running guns and drugs for the Contras. So the thing is, I would just caution people about that. So what did I find on this?
I want you to pick up where you left off with the most recent discoveries you've made, and then explain to us why they matter. Okay.
You got it. So
you have to stay healthy and well at times like this. That I often have suffered from mobility issues, and now I don't. Part of my lifestyle is Native Path collagen. So Native Path's collagen formula is made with ingredients that are scientifically developed to increase bone mineral density, support tissue recovery, reduce wrinkles, enhance hair thickness, and strengthen nails. Who wouldn't want more collagen with all of these benefits? So right now, when you visit getnativepath.com/Daily Clout, you can stock up on Native Path collagen for up to an incredible 45% off today, plus free shipping. Every order comes with a 365-day money-back guarantee. You can try it risk-free today. It is a single ingredient formula with no fillers, additives, or artificial sweeteners, and it's third-party tested for heavy metals, which makes sure that it is pure and safe. It's flavorless. You can add it to anything. I add it to my oatmeal. You can add it to coffee or smoothies. Its formula makes it more bioavailable, meaning it's absorbed more easily and mixes without clumping. And the best part is Native Path is offering amazing bundle deals, 3 or 6 packs at a fraction of the price of other brands. With over 4 million jars sold, 1 million happy customers, 8,000 5-star reviews, and a 365-day no-risk guarantee, Native Path is a trusted choice, and they offer an 800 number. You can ask any question. A real person is waiting to help. You can join a private Facebook community. I love these people. Share recipes, success stories. So that's getnativepath.com/Daily Clout and start your experience of transformation today.
The things that I found were that he had this conflict of interest, and then he just kind of disappeared. But then, really interestingly, before Michael McAuliffe's term ended in, I believe, mid or early 2012. Well, he left. He left his elected job to go. He just left. McAuliffe left. Michael McAuliffe just left before his term was over. It's an elected position down there in Florida.
Why did he do that?
Well, he had a better offer from one of the Koch brothers. I can't make it up. It's amazing. It's amazing how slimy these people are. So check it, but it gets better, Naomi. He left for his Koch brothers job, but then what ended up happening was he got fired pretty quickly. The local paper down there put out an article called "Gone in 60 Seconds" because Michael McAuliffe, and I'm trying to pull that up while we're talking, Michael McAuliffe got fired. And he got fired in such a manner, as the article goes, that, there we go, pull that up, that he was walked out of the building by security.
Oh my goodness.
And they cleared his name off of the, website and everything, just like that, like he never existed. So, there we go. On my Substack, I probably should have been sleeping around this time, but I had to get it out. So here's what happened. Michael McAuliffe, former Palm Beach state attorney who resigned his public office in 2012 to go to work for billionaire Bill Koch's Oxbow Corporation, got fired and escorted out of the Koch business. Now, they don't go into detail about what happened, but basically what it says was, so McAuliffe, Palm Beach attorney, resigned his public office in 2012 to go to work for Palm Beach billionaire Bill Koch's Oxbow Corporation, which is an oil and energy company. He's no longer working at West Palm Beach-based energy company, the Gossip Extra learned. McAuliffe's last day as general counsel of the mining and oil business was Monday, according to a source close to McAuliffe. He was given a few minutes to clean his office and was spotted being escorted from the company's headquarters off Palm Beach Lakes Boulevard. We reached out to, by Tuesday, McAuliffe's biography disappeared from the list of executives on the company's website. That's like the day after.
Do we not know what happened?
We don't know. So they did ask, and I gotta say, there's, hat tip to like the Palm Beach Post and like the Gossip and all these. Some of these Florida papers, like they're going up against these billionaires and they don't care. A lot of my sourcing or leads came from the Palm Beach Post and the Gainesville Gazette. I don't know if it's still like that down there, but hat tip to them as journalists. It's nice to see. But so what happened? That's what they asked. Office politics. All they were told is that McAuliffe was busted by Koch trying to deal directly with the Oxbow board of directors without telling Koch. It didn't sit well with the billionaire. He likes loyalty. And what's interesting about that activity of this Michael McAuliffe is that if you think back to the way the Epstein case was handled by his predecessor, Barry Kersher, and Alexander Acosta, well, the big lawsuit that came out of that was these guys went to the judge and they worked out the sweetheart deal and left the victims out of it. So these people have a history of dealing like this, going around people, and the pattern looks almost exactly the same with this kind of activity. Not saying it's him, but we see that in that ecosystem that's around like President Trump, where he had his his military guys going around his back to China. Everyone goes, yeah. And so this is, and these people, I know these people, this is what they do. You don't trust anyone in the swamp, and the swamp extends to little mini swamps all over the country, even in the great state of Florida.
So, wow. Okay. That's pretty intense. So going back to the present moment, his wife chose not to unseal the Epstein records that Trump has asked to have unsealed. Is that the bottom line? That is
the bottom line.
That's unbelievable. His wife.
Is
that not a gigantic disqualifying conflict of interest?
I'm not a lawyer, but I'd love to hear from one, even if they're in your audience, because I'm pretty sure she would at least have to mention that. It doesn't matter if it's public record. but again, and I was just on a different show and I mentioned this, and I'll mention it here on our show, our lovely warm Lair, that why didn't Pam Bondi mention this?
Would she know?
Yes, because I looked up and Michael McAuliffe was in that very powerful position. Remember, Palm Beach County is one of the richest counties in Florida, if not the richest. And so if you're the Florida State Attorney General, you're the top law enforcement representative for that county, and you have a lot of weight because you have a lot of money. You got Koch brothers living in your county. So the thing is, I looked up Michael McAuliffe and Pam Bondi just before the show, and there were things that he was writing up that she was approving. She was the Florida State.
Slow down.
Sorry, lots of coffee, not a lot of sleep.
Yeah, you got to slow down here. This is a big story. I just want to make sure we've got the personalities correct. You're saying Pam Bondi, the current AG, was approving things that Michael McAuliffe wrote? When?
Yeah, and I'm 2011 during his term was within her term as Florida State Attorney General.
You're saying Pam Bondi was Florida State Attorney General, and she
yes,
things that Whoa!
Yes,
what an incestuous little.
She would have known that there was a conflict. Why didn't she mention it?
My God, Brian.
I mean, unless she's the dumbest person on earth, how could you not have this judge and say, hey, oh yeah, I know you guys from the cocktail party at the golf course. What are you doing here? Like, there's no way she doesn't know. Now, I don't have anything with her and that particular judge, but that judge's current husband, Michael McAuliffe, was one of the top Florida state attorneys while Pam Bondi was State Attorney General of Florida.
Unbelievable. Whoa. So basically, when Trump, sensibly, I advocated for this, asked Pam Bondi to ask the judge to unseal the Epstein grand jury transcript, at that point, Pam Bondi should have said to him, Mr. President, that is pointless, or I can't do it, or there's a conflict there because that judge is married to the guy who protected Jeffrey Epstein a decade ago, and presumably she didn't do it, right? Is that what you're saying? Like,
yeah, she did not, it's her, look, her job is to, carry out, his directives. And so, I mean, it would seem obvious that, hey, you go to the boss and you say, hey, boss, check this out. Like that court case we're doing that you want to happen, you want the unsealing. There's a little conflict and we need to get that judge removed. That apparently, if that did happen, it wasn't successful. If it didn't happen, that's pure negligence on her part. How this woman is still in her position, I do not know. Because let's not forget, Trump is... He usually just fires people. She's now screwed up multiple times.
Unless everyone doesn't want the grand jury transcripts.
Or maybe she's threatening him somehow, because let's not forget, reporting right now is saying that she's the one that said, hey, we're not going to release those files. Apparently she said this back in May. She said, hey, we're not going to release those files, according to reporting, because your name's in them. Well, yeah, his name probably is in them. A lot of people's names are in them. Yeah. So she probably didn't lie to him. She probably just kind of, did a little wordsmithing there. And he's so busy and he's so stressed out because, people are trying to shoot him in the head and everything, that he probably would just, he's one of those delegators. Like, he wants to trust his cabinet. Unfortunately, in this case here, I think his cabinet is great. I think Tulsi Gabbard's doing an incredible job, and Mark Rubio and the like. As far as Pam Bondi, I mean, I don't trust that woman. It sounds like the May thing was a bit of a threat. And let's not forget, she was the Florida State Attorney General. She would already have access to the grand jury records. Think about it.
So she's already read them. She already knows what's in them.
Of course she knows what's in them. And Naomi, I think and I think anyone with a brain would agree, and I'm sorry my light's going crazy. I think anyone with a brain would agree that, if his name was in there doing nefarious things, then the Biden administration had 4 years to sink him, I would think they'd throw that hand grenade because, let's face the facts, they threw everything else at him they could. And let's not forget another thing. Recently, the Wall Street Journal, sounds like erroneously reported that he signed some graphic message on Epstein's birthday card, which also makes no sense because the birthday was after Epstein was exiled from Mar-a-Lago. If that's all they got, then they don't have anything. They're just making things up. It's my belief that birthday card story came out because this case was going, and I think the media working for the deep state, whatever you want to call it, said let's get a distraction. Let's come up with something, and let's not forget the timing. Okay, it was just at the beginning of the week that Tulsi Gabbard came out and pointed the finger at Obama for Russiagate, and now this judge who was appointed by Obama. And also her husband, who was shoved into his position by the Obama camp, a very powerful, PAC down there in Florida, put him in and told Kershaw, "You're out, he's in." The timing can't be ignored. That happens. Wedding card, that didn't work to distract from Obama. So they just said, "Screw it, we're just going to seal the records." That's how it is. Yeah, it's a bombshell. It really is. And if you look at, and then I'll hand the mic back. I'm sorry, but if you look back at the decision here, let me just get there. I do apologize. But if you look at the decision, basically there we go. Go down here, and this is what got me to look into this. I had, as you know, a whole nother episode going. And then I read this. It says, so she basically says, yeah, she's going to block them from moving this to New York.
Oh my God.
She says that in this brief, which came out on, I think the 23rd. And then listen to this. She says, it is further ordered that because the undersigned, that being the judge, has been presiding over a United States petition to unseal grand jury transcript that was filed as part of the grand jury docket, the case should be directly assigned to the undersigned. So basically, what does that mean? That means any other cases all need to go to me. I need to control this.
That's not even our legal process.
I don't know, but I've never heard of a judge pre-assigning herself to a case that doesn't even exist.
No, into the future, into perpetuity, no matter what happens to her and her.
But then look at the last line, Naomi. It is further ordered that because the government's petition is denied, the clerk of the court shall close the case. They all want this to go away. So in closing, then I'll hand you the mic back. What's happening here with the legacy media, with the left-wing media, here's what's happening, is they're doing this whole song and dance of saying, open the files, while knowing they won't be opened, or hoping they won't be opened. So that way they could say they're the champions of transparency. Then on the conservative paid side, on the nefarious conservative side, and let's face it, sorry guys, but our side has got a lot of rats in it too.
That includes me and our side. I'm independent, but go ahead.
Well, my side is a side of freedom, so that's what I consider our side. The freedom movement has been infiltrated or got some of that nastiness stuck on its shoe as it walked into the White House. Mm-hmm. And so on that side, what's happening is they're saying, trust Trump, stop asking. Well, and even Trump to some degree was saying that. President Trump was saying that. But to his credit, he said, okay, fine. He kind of had a temper tantrum and said, fine, you want it. You're making a big deal about it. I'll open it. But what's really, really bad is like the influencers that I used to know and trust. It's kind of like on one side of another issue, we talked about the ABV strategy, the anything but the vaccines messaging. Right. On this side, it's move on, move on. Move on. There's bigger things to worry about. Well, in my opinion, there's not. Because in 2010, child sex trafficking outpaced both illegal weapon sales and illegal narcotics on the international scale as the most profitable business. Jeffrey Epstein trafficked
Hold on. You're going way too fast. The most profitable business out of all businesses, or out of
all gray and black businesses?
Businesses. Thank you. Go ahead.
So it's alleged that there's thousands of victims, okay? And then They preceded the story. Don't forget that it came out in testimony from one of the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, or Epstein himself, or Max, I forgot who, that he had a condition where he had to ejaculate so many times a day.
Right.
And that's a way of pre-explaining why there's thousands of victims. That sounds as...
why would you want to pre-explain why there's thousands of victims? That's not going to make
because then there's no conspiracy and there's no co-conspirators. That's him. That's
him. It's all for his domestic consumption.
Yeah, exactly. And it's as ludicrous as Prince Randy Andy saying that he had a peculiar condition when he can't sweat, even though he's sweating on camera. So
yeah, we've run out of time.
Well, Naomi, let me close with this, okay? This is the book that her husband wrote. Well, Mr. McAuliffe, I would counter by saying maybe these documents might contain a few more truths that are left to tell.
Whoa. Well, this is brilliant. You're the best investigator on the planet.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I'm really impressed. I hope everyone understands what they've seen. I'm just going to end by saying I can't believe that when you do a conflict search, you don't I can't believe she isn't legally supposed to recuse herself, and that Pam Bondi isn't supposed to compel her to legally recuse herself.
Yes.
It's worth hearing from lawyers about that.
Naomi, I found this in 30 minutes on my iPhone while I was walking Loki.
Yeah, baby. Well, but you're also a genius. But I hear you.
Genius.
There's no excuse for her not, right? She has a staff, and she is the attorney general. So it's disgusting. It's huge. It's one of the biggest stories of the year, if not the decade. It was broken by Brian O'Shea, everybody. So you can reach out to Brian.
Brian O'Shea of dailyclout.io.
Yeah, so it's Brian at dailyclout.io, because I know a lot of press will want to contact you directly.
Yeah.
And you guys have to go to his podcast Outspoken on Daily Clout or on Rumble. You got to go.
No. My podcast is Investigate Everything.
Sorry, baby. See, subconsciously, I was trying to appropriate your glory.
Well, we're married, so it's Peter and Paul. So,
Peter, Paul, and Jane, or perhaps Peter and Jane. Anyway, that's another conversation. But you got to go to Investigate Everything. And look, do you like these insights? We have bills to pay. We have staff to pay. We have producers to pay. We have hosting to pay. You get the media that you support. So if you want independent investigation, the New York Times didn't find this. Respectfully, the Gateway Pundit didn't find this. Brian O'Shea found it. Please.
I think they found it, Naomi. Sorry to keep interrupting. Of course they found it.
Maybe the New York Times, but we're friends with the Gateway Pundit, so let's not presume they found it. But anyway, Brian O'Shea found it. Please support Investigate Everything, support Daily Clout, support my Substack Outspoken, support In the Lair, and thank you for joining us. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you. Sorry I had to cut out.
Anything else? We're done? We're saying goodbye?
I'm just getting warmed up, but I'll do that on another show. I'm all pumped up now.
Follow you on X at Brian O'Shea SPI. You can follow me at Naomi R. Wolf. And thank you, darling. Huge, amazing work. Bye,
thank
everybody.
you. You too.